any case, the list hub feed to Zillow is gone. And the San Diego Association of Realtors is working with Syndicor, and they're trying to come up with a data license agreement to the Zillow group, which would be the second direct agreement that this organization representing you would have with a publisher. So these are times when you have to make really good decisions and really well-informed decisions. So please ask your questions. So with that, Saul's going to talk for about 10 minutes, and we have runners who are going to come around to the tables and grab your questions. So if you've written down a question, please hold it up so somebody can see that you have one, and then we'll get to the good stuff in just a minute. So with that, the most famous realtor in America from San Diego, Saul Klein.
Oh, it's great to be here in San Diego where I live. And it's always a pleasure to address the San Diego Association of Realtors, and I was president here in 1993. And it's great to be on a panel with these people. You know, we travel around the country together, it almost seems, and we're on panels and we eat dinner together and we're all friends. And hearing us talk, though, it might not seem like we're really friends, but I think we are, and we all have respect for each other's businesses. So I want to do a review for you. I told Victor just cut me off when he wants to cut me off, because I'll just kind of keep talking. I'll talk as fast as I can. I'll get through as much information as I can, and you can contact me afterwards if you want any more. So first, we're experiencing the manifestations of the last 25 years of technological change, human connection, and generational differences. All of this stuff is starting to come together. And so what was it like before 1993? In 1993 was the year I was president here. We had 3-ring binders and errata when I first got into real estate. So we had the 3-ring binders. We got paper every week. We had to go in and every day, and we had to make changes by hand, and then we got MLS books with hot sheets, and I just thought of this. The MLS books were pink and blue, right? And so one week they were pink, one week they were blue. They had condos one week, and then the other week they had houses. And I thought that was the technological change, because we had that gum binding on the side, and it now was better than a 3-ring binder. So we had those hot sheets, and then we had computer terminals with this thermal paper. Remember that? And you had to make the phone call. You had to call, and it was all tied to phone lines. On Monday morning, you go in to do a showing, you can't get through because you get a busy signal. The MLS vendor has to get more phone lines. It was crazy. Then we got kiosks. Anybody remember the kiosk in Long Drugstore? A guy by the name of Richard Jansen, who actually was like one of the key players in Realtor.com. Richard Jansen came to us in 1992 at the San Diego Association of Realtors. He said, we got to put kiosks in drugstores. He said, people going to drugstores really shopping for real estate? He said, no, we got to put kiosks in drugstores. It's great, and people will want to look. And he went to Syndicor, and he convinced them that we should have kiosks in drugstores, and so but the contract didn't say on kiosks. It said he had the right to electronic display, which was critical. And here's a picture of that brochure, that kiosk brochure, and if you look at the bottom, it says Home Select Kiosk, the automated 7-minute home find. Can you imagine you're at Long's Drugstore and you're going to stand in front of this thing for 7 minutes? And when people are going to put their information in, and the listing agent's going to get leads. That was the theory. So it didn't really work. And so we introduced Richard. At that time, I was the only realtor that was making any money through the Realtors Information Network, because NAR hired me as a consultant. And they brought me in, and they said, look at all this technology. Please tell us how a broker would use it. And so I sat down, I wrote all the original marketing pieces with an NAR staff member. We tried to figure out how you would use this RIN Network desktop, and what about this thing called the World Wide Web? Maybe we should look at putting listings on the World Wide Web, but there's this big argument in real estate because public display to MLS was like a bad thing. And everybody was afraid of public display. But I liked the kiosk thing, and this World Wide Web thing sounded great. And so the National Association of Realtors said, Saul, why don't you go talk MLSs into putting their data up here? And I said, I'm game, but I know the first question I'm going to be asked. They're going to say, who else is doing it? And so Richard said, no problem. I got this contract that says electronic display. And so internet's electronic display. We'll just put San Diego up on the internet. So they put San Diego up on the internet. And the first appointment I had was Austin. And I went to Austin. I had black and white acetate overheads to describe the World Wide Web. And at that time, if you wanted your listings on what was Realtor.com, we got permission from NAR to use Realtor.com. By the way, Realtor.com at that time was owned by NAR, wholly owned by NAR. And so I went to Austin. I got in front of the board of directors, black and white acetate overheads. And I didn't have a contract because I didn't think anybody was going to buy into this right away. And $2 a listing per month, Austin would pay Realtor.com to put the list. And the Austin board of directors voted to fund it through the association. So they were pioneers. They were the leaders. They were really the first ones to put their listings on Realtor.com, and really the first ones to walk away from syndication. So back in that day, so back at that time, people, I'd say, look, it's internet advertising. They say, what is internet advertising? So I'd explain, you know, it's an inexpensive new medium. It's accessible, but get this, 20 million people are using this. That was a lot back then. It exists now, and it's the wave of the future. This is the original slide. I said, what form does it currently exist? Well, it's over 4,000 real estate sites. Google real estate today and see how many real estate sites you get. There are 4,000, and they only had a few listings on each one. So they're kind of worthless. You get 3 listings here and 3 listings here. It just wasn't any good. And the number of sites kept growing, and it was growing, we thought, pretty quickly. And who was sponsoring these sites? Newspapers and magazines, national and regional brokers. And then we identified something that we called non-traditional real estate organizations. Now, we didn't know what they were. Non-traditional real estate organizations. So why should you be concerned? There was this, we saw this fragmentation. So this continued fragmentation, we thought, would weaken one of our strongest assets, our inventory. It's powerful, all that inventory together. And then these non-traditional services could gain a foothold. And they said non-traditional services are not necessarily realtor friendly. Kind of ring a bell to the way the whole thing evolved. And Billy Chi in 1993 gave this speech. You remember the Lion speech? Billy Chi, president of NAR, state president of the Hawaii Association of Realtors before that, he said, the lion's coming over the hill, and realtors are like a bunch of chihuahuas arguing over the bone. And I was the president here in '93, and I was inspired by Billy Chi. And so in 1995, RIN, which was the Realtors Information Network, gave birth to Realtor.com, owned by NAR. We went out. I told you the first one was Austin. I got the first 500,000 listings on Realtor.com, me, traveling across the country, meeting with boards of directors, with acetate overheads, telling them about this electronic thing. Direct feeds from every MLS. We had 500,000 listings, 1996, Atlanta. We launched Realtor.com. Realtor.com, the directors of NAR thought they had spent too much money when they got to about $15 million. So they needed to get rid of this thing. And so they spun it off to Richard Jansen and some investors he put together, and they worked, and they took this thing public. And NAR owned a piece of it. A lot of people could buy into it. And so Realtor.com gave birth to the Home Store. They later changed their name to Move. Realtor.com is the flagship of Move, right? Still to this day, it's an asset. Now, Bill Gates, in 1995, this is what Bill Gates said about the internet. He said, if you put your house on the market, you'll be able to describe it fully and include photographs, video, floor plans, tax records, utility and repair bills, and even a little mood music. The chances that a potential buyer for your house will see your ad are improved because the information highway, that's what they called it, will make it easy for everyone to look up. This is key. The whole system of real estate agencies and commissions may be changed by the principals having direct access to so much information. Bill Gates, The Road Ahead, page 173. You can look it up. And then he said, at first, these online classified ads won't be very attractive. Got to remember, like Craigslist, maybe, right? Won't be very attractive, but not many people will use it. But then word of mouth will entice more people to use it. You'll get this positive feedback loop. And when a critical mass is achieved, he said, which might only be a few years, it took longer than he thought, the information highway's classified advertising service will be transformed from a curiosity to the primary way sellers and buyers get together. So Bill had it right. As a matter of fact, there's a guy that was working with Bill back at that time, was working in this Expedia project, a guy named Rich Barton, who founded Zillow. And he has some interesting quotes about that time. I won't go over them with you. So the first generation portals were Realtor.com, Home Seekers, Cyber Homes, Home Advisor, which is now a different kind of site, but it was a Microsoft site, Homes.com. And what we were pitching at Realtor.com was this idea of exclusivity. It didn't make sense to any of us in this project at the time to put your listings in more than one place. So no, I got to put it up. No, consumers don't know. It's not out there yet. It's not about the consumer. It's not out there yet. So let's put it in one place. Let's keep it there. Let's be exclusive. Why? Because when I would talk to boards of realtors back then, I would say it's going to be like the Super Bowl. If the Super Bowl were on 15 channels, they couldn't charge as much for the ads. And so they keep it in one place. And guess what? Consumers know how to watch the Super Bowl. They don't have any problem. Why? Because the content is valuable to them. And so just a chart, last year the audience for the Super Bowl, it's like 115 million. And you can look at the money and how much money they're making. There's a lot of money in content. 4.5, look, it's amazing, year after year, more money in content. And how many people, 115 million people watch the Super Bowl? How many people go to Zillow? 80 million a month or something, right? How many go to Troy? 50 million, huge numbers, much greater than 115 million. There's a lot of money in all this traffic. One of the early Realtor.com web pages. And Realtor.com was the #1 most visited real estate website in the world for 11 years. And then what happened? Second generation portals. Zillow, Realtor.com survived. Zillow started giving stuff the eye. It was kind of neat what was happening. A lot of distribution. Trulia was jumped into, as a matter of fact, the guys from, I had got to meet with Lloyd Frick up at Zillow, and I got to meet with Pete Flint down in San Diego, and as they were building these things early on. And the problem was they didn't have any content. They needed content. And ListHub started to syndicate. It was just a word for distribution. So they had these syndication contracts, and I had an idea in 2007 that somebody should compete with ListHub. There was no competition. So I went to Point 2 and put together a strategy at Point 2, and I hired a guy named Walt Bukowski, who was the executive officer here when I was president here. And Walt came up to Point 2, it was in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and in 18 months we built a syndication network with about 1.5 million listings, and we now could compete with ListHub. That's what we wanted to do, to distribute the data. This is what we believe. We said, your listing, it goes out everywhere, and let's watch this. So I was at Point 2, I could watch where we sent it. I could watch how much data that we sent got published. I could see how many leads came in from the data that we got published. I have to tell you, I was ashamed, because it wasn't what you might think it would be. And yet I wanted to keep moving this syndication thing, right? So we got the syndication, they got the listings. What happened to Realtor.com? Had to go back 3 places, right? Realtor.com drops down the ladder. It's #1, now Realtor.com's #3. And so what happened, you can see this is from Hitwise back in 2012, and Zillow just bounced right to the top. Trulia #2, Realtor.com. And so Zillow did a great job. They jumped into the marketplace. They knew they were going after the consumer, and they got them. They got a lot of traffic, did a great job. Trulia the same way. Now what the portals will tell you, and I kind of mentioned this, is there's all this traffic. 80 million, whatever the number is, 60 million, 50 million. That's at one site. Realtor.com's got their 30 million. Trulia's got their 50 million. Now the important thing is that there's only 5 million transactions per year. 5 million transactions. What the heck are all those other people doing? It's like real estate's become the new pornography on the web. People just like to go look. And they enjoy looking, and these sites are great, and they're high tech, and they really are powerful, and they got gaming strategies, and they get you to want to go back, and even if you, I don't want to buy a house, but I'm interested in what that castle looks like. Now, if you haven't gone to Zillow and gone to Trulia and gone to Realtor.com and signed up just to see what kind of communications you get and how they work, I highly recommend that you do that. And that the information you got today is so important, because knowledge is power. And being able to demonstrate that you know about this online world, to be able to demonstrate expertise, is powerful. So a lot of great information that was given to you today. But I kind of like these castles once I got into them. I'll never buy one. And somebody said Zillow puts FSBOs up there. Yeah, they do. They got this idea. This whole idea of a living database, which is not a bad idea. So now we got this battle raging. You've heard little bits and pieces about it, but it is a battle. August 2010, ListHub was purchased by Move. Move owned Realtor.com. Move was in competition with Zillow and Trulia. Move went from #1 to #3. What's one way you can knock the #1 guy out? take their content away. What did Realtor.com do? They bought ListHub. Now they got a major portion of the content for these other sites, but they don't have it all because they don't have point two. And we were smaller than ListHub, but Zillow and Troy, they could play one of us off the other. That was good. That was smart. If Troy wouldn't do something, maybe point two, or if ListHub wouldn't do something, maybe point two would. And it kind of worked that way for about 3.5 years. And then in September of last year, Move bought point two, which means that Realtor.com owns ListHub and point two, which means all those MLS contracts now run through ListHub, which is owned by Realtor.com, which is number 3 and wants to be number 1 again, right? Hey, this is an exciting time to be watching all this. And then October last year, about October, News Corp, you know, the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch, he jumps in. He says, I'm buying Realtor.com. So now you have another gazillionaire in the mix because there's so much value in this real estate marketplace. And then, of course, we knew this would happen. What did now ListHub, that has all the data, now what did they say to Zillow and Troy? Play by our rules or we're not giving you the data. So then we had a deadline. And if you wanted your listings to get out there on Zillow and Troya, you had to somehow, your MLS had to figure out how to do this for you. And we're still debating and dealing with that at Syndicore. But everybody thought panic would ensue and that the consumers would be irate and they would go crazy because they want their properties on Zillow. And I imagine that happened to a degree, but maybe not as much as some people thought. And so one of the consequences now of the great success of Zillow and Troya and Realtor.com, because they're all in the same basket, right? All in the same basket, they're all moving upstream because that is where you need to be. That's where you've always been. And now they're going to move ahead of you there, and they're going to use your content to draw people. It's a smart strategy. So why do people want to go upstream? It's nice upstream. And I kind of like it myself. So how do you deal upstream? You know, real estate's an upstream business. When you meet somebody, they're not listing their house today, probably. They're not buying something today. You meet them, you develop a relationship with them, you cultivate these leads, you do farming, prospecting, sphere of influence. It's time consuming, isn't it? One of the most time consuming aspects of real estate is prospecting, which makes me think maybe what these guys are doing is great. Maybe they're replacing the most time consuming aspect of the real estate business. I'll just throw that out there for them. But it might be. But so no longer can we stand around and just let this happen the way it's happening. Now, if you get a benefit out of these portals, you should put your data there. If your sellers want their data there, you should do that. Although my sellers sometimes said to me, I want to be in the San Diego Union. And I'd say, I don't want to run an ad in the San Diego Union. I'm already running an ad on 4 other properties. No, I want my property. This is driving me crazy. Or they wanted an open house that I didn't want to hold. Right? And I knew it wasn't going to sell their house, that if anything, it might get me some leads, but they wanted to do it. Right? It's like I had to either educate them or do it. Now nobody wants to educate people anymore. They say, I guess if they want it, we're going to give it to them. But maybe we ought to look at educating them about what's going on today. So upstream, you don't get upstream quickly. Upstream's a journey. And all the things that the portals do, expensive, you know, great people working on it, and it takes them a while to get upstream. Why is upstream important? Upstream is where relationships begin. Upstream is where you have an opportunity to engage people. Engagements build relationships. So how do you build relationships? 3 things. You build rapport, right? Pick somebody up, throw them in the back seat of my car when I drive them around, show them real estate. We say, I was in a real estate mortician business. Throw people in the back seat, drive them around until they're dead. During that period of time, I had to get to know them. I'd ask things like, you know, where'd you go, where are you from, where'd you go to high school, how old are your kids? And so I'd find something, what are you in the Navy? I was in the Navy. Boom, okay, I was in the Navy. I can talk to you now. Right? I'd build rapport. And by building rapport, we gain a little trust and confidence. And then another way to build trust and confidence is to demonstrate expertise. Tell them that I didn't, at the time, I tell them I know about Zillow, I know about Troya, I know about the contract. Here's a copy of the contract, read it. You got to demonstrate expertise, build trust and confidence. I tell you what, if you don't have trust and confidence, you're probably not going to get a contract. And you're probably never going to get a referral, which is the next step. So rapport, trust and confidence, contracts and referrals. What's happening is the portals are building rapport ahead of you. And so when you hear this term, and it's important for you to know, when you hear the term upstream, that's what they're talking about. So what does it look like? Well, different ways to engage. You know, face-to-face, that's kind of, a lot of people don't like that anymore, but, you know, it still works. Letters. Letters. My mom and dad maintained a relationship during World War II. My dad was on submarines in the South Pacific. They maintained a relationship by writing letters. So letters are a good form of communication. Matter of fact, they were really good letter writers. Email, the telephone, email, text, photos with text. Each one of these is an engagement, isn't it? And each engagement has a different value. And there is some number of engagements it takes before you're at that point where you have trust and confidence. So you need to make these engagements, and social media and the internet today gives you all this capability to engage. And social, like, do you ever like somebody's something on Facebook? That's an engagement. Think about those likes, because they set off some kind of chemical reaction in the person that sees the like. Have you ever shared it? Right? These are all engagements of some sort. So learn about them. Retweeting, that's an engagement. Tweeting, an engagement. A lot of companies will push email with links back, push and pull. They're just engaging people. Effective marketing should be 4 things. I would write these down. They're critical, frequent, anticipated, relevant, and personal. Frequent, anticipated, relevant, and personal. Send it to me often. Matter of fact, so often that I start to look forward to it. Make it relevant, because then I'll look forward to it. You ever walk down the cold remedy aisle at a drugstore? Typically, you don't even notice it unless you have a cold. And that's relevant. And then if it's personal, you get a letter addressed to occupant, you throw it away. You get a letter that's got your name on it, you might open it, right? Frequent, anticipated, relevant, and personal. Trulia does an amazing job of communicating. So I went to Trulia, I signed up, I told them what I was interested in, and I get this newsletter. This is what a realtor should do. It's fantastic. It's got great information, all about my neighborhood. Then they send me this trends report. Well, I kind of like that. I'm never going to sell my house. My wife bought our house in 1967. You know, Prop 13. So no, we're never moving anywhere. But I love it. Trulia does a great job. That's information I'm interested in. It's relevant. They're teaching people about real estate. You know, proven ways to increase the value of your home. That should come from a realtor, huh? They're doing this every day. I'm getting these. I love them. The best of Trulia, right? 7 solutions for wireless rooms. All kind of interesting stuff. Oh, buying a home after a breakup. Avoid these seller situations. I just wanted to show you my inbox, to show you that I get these every day. And I don't mind, because the information is relevant to me. And so what is Trulia doing? They're building a relationship with me. What's Trulia doing? They're building relationships with everybody you deal with. And at some point in time, they could be have such a great relationship with Trulia that they really don't want to start the relationship with you. And my time's up, but I want to add one more thing before I go, and that is Zillow's idea of a property database of all homes. I call that a property wiki. I think that is a great idea. It's an amazing idea, because whether or not a property is for sale is just a moment in time in the life of that property, right? And so it's a great idea. At the same time, from a real estate broker perspective, I would fear it based on never make a decision based on fear. I would fear it just based on what happens when, and people say, well, it's not accurate. Have you ever heard that about Zillow? It's not accurate. I'll tell you what, I think it's accurate in a lot of places. And I think it's getting more accurate. And I think it will continue to get more accurate. And I think that owners of homes will start to put more information and more data, and they'll build that database, and it will become the authoritative source. Now, Realtor.com does the same thing, right? And Trulia does the same thing. But Zillow's actually come out and made a statement about this real powerful idea of having a database of all homes. Now, I believe that we should be doing that in the industry. But Trulia's done it, and congratulations to them for moving out on this. So 2015, I won't go through that. Property Wiki, there's a wiki bus from Hawaii. There's Kurt's diagram. What a great idea, living database of all homes. Vows, Redfin. What about Zillow? List for free. List for free, buy for 3. That's coming. There is a better way. I call it MLS Next. Getting some of that traffic back from these big guys. Maybe there's enough money to help pay those MLS fees. And if you have any questions, call Saul.
So before we got started today, Saul showed me his slides. He had 40 of them. And I said, Saul, you have 10 minutes. He said, I talk fast. I can do it. He went a little...